8:35, morning to you. Let's go through the papers now with former Lib Dem Minister Norman Baker and the writer and journalist Emma Wolfe. Morning again, you two. Let's start with the Telegraph, should we, Emma? And King Charles, the King and Queen, making their sort of first official engagement, making Dunfermline into a city.
We haven't had that much on King Charles. I mean, we've got a new king, and, you know, the focus has been so much on everything else, but King Charles here in Scotland, back in Scotland, looking really lovely and happy, actually, in... I've got him in the Express, smiling away. This is Dunfermline, which has been conferred city status by the Queen as part of her Platinum Jubilee celebrations. He looks really jolly and happy, the royal smile. He is wearing an old Stuart kilt, and there was a piped band, and there were crowds and happy people cheering and singing God Save the King. And this is Charles and Camilla back in Dunfermline to confer city status on them.
It's a lovely photograph of the monarch, actually, really smiling. He's got a fantastic grandpa smile, very sort of... I don't know what the word is, really, just sort of, it looks lovely.
It's quite nice to see the Queen out and about as well, isn't it?
Well, I mean, they're obviously going to enjoy their time now as...
it's getting used to saying that as well.
Well, indeed, I thought for a moment you made a mistake, but you...
Do we say the Queen, or do we say Queen Consort?
No, we say Queen.
Okay.
No, we say Queen, don't we? Because it's... I was told by the military that the consort is there as a term. You don't use it once a majesty has been laid to rest. The consort gets dropped.
That's news to me. It may well be true.
That's how she's referred to in the army.
Okay, well, there we are. I'm learning something today. But, yeah, I mean, the point is they're both out there and happy and smiling. And that's a pun, of course, the royal smile after the Royal Mile in Edinburgh.
Oh, yeah.
And shaking hands with Nicola Sturgeon, interestingly. It's interesting to see what this kind of focus on Scotland will do for the whole incident.
Well, absolutely. With the death of Her Majesty also happening in Scotland and that outpouring of grief, the royals was not great for Nicola Sturgeon, was it?
No.
And then the first visit that the King and the Queen Consort, or Queen, whatever we are.
Queen, yes.
I feel nervous calling her that. That was their first appearance, wasn't it, since their royal mourning period had ended. So, yeah, interesting having Scotland very much front and centre on their agenda. Norman, should we talk about Brazil?
Yes, this is a less happy story in some ways, I'm afraid, because Bolsonaro, who is this, in my view, this terrible right-wing president who's been busy cutting down the Amazon in a kind of a macho way, thought he was going to get hammered in the elections in Brazil for the new presidency, and actually he came quite close, only 5 points behind, which means there's now a runoff between him and his opponent, who's the previous president. And the problem here is that Bolsonaro's been trying to already suggest, in a way that Donald Trump did in advance, that he wouldn't accept the election results. It's all fiddled. It's a straight election result if he wins, and it's clearly fiddled if he loses. So we could be on some difficulty there. But, you know, seriously, the environmental point is that we've had a lot of the Amazon cut down, more so than any other year ever, I think. And if he gets back in, it's, you know, curtains for the Amazon.
It's interesting because that ties in. You've picked a story in The Guardian as well, Norman, haven't you, about COP27?
Yes.
Then the UK mustn't back down on climate. But, I mean, on the back of that, on what Bolsonaro's done with the rainforest, I mean, it brings it into some sort of perspective, doesn't it?
Well, it does. And what worries me, Steve, thank you for linking the stories, is the fact that King Charles isn't going to COP. And he's not going, not because he doesn't want to, but because he's been told he can't go by the Prime Minister, Liz Truss. And this is, I think, an own goal. Britain's got soft power. Charles is well known internationally for being in favour of taking action on climate change. In the paper today in The Guardian, it said that the Commonwealth expect them to go. They wanted to be there as leader of the Commonwealth. You've got Egypt, who's hosting COP27, saying, why is he not coming? And this is another own goal, I think, and it worries me because it suggests that the whole issue of climate change, which was quite prominent through Boris Johnson's premiership, way back to David Cameron and Tony Blair, is now being downgraded a bit by Liz Truss, and that worries me.
It seems such an odd move, this, you know, telling the king, a new king, that he should not be attending the next COP, really. I mean, what is wrong? Of course Charles can't be as political as he may have.
Buckingham Palace asked for advice on this from Downing Street, apparently.
But I can't see anything wrong with the king being pro the environment, pro the earth. Frankly.
No, but it is interesting, isn't it, when you look at, I mean, certainly from a lot of people we hear from, via email, you know, the green agenda and the net zero agenda is actually proving to be very unpopular during the cost of living crisis.
Yeah, of course, and things that cost a lot are not front and centre necessarily of people's concerns at the moment, of course that, but the King can also do what he does best, which is what Prince Charles does, is bring people together, you know. King Charles, I'm so sorry, as a prince what he did, and of course, yes, he does need to rein it back a bit. I just think it was a real shame, and I think that I was surprised actually that his first move was to accept the advice.
He has to
accept that advice, yeah.
Well, instruction, really. But on the net zero, Steve, can I just say that it's not a choice between environment and economy. It really isn't, because, for example, net zero means that we end our dependence on foreign oil and gas by having renewable sources at home which don't emit carbon. And that's actually really good for the economy and good for our defence.
It makes a lot of sense in a lot of ways. I think the concern is that obviously there are green levies and things which all help contribute towards this, which people don't want to pay at the moment. I mean, that's the issue, isn't it?
Well, you're going to want to pay, but actually they'll pay more in due course if we don't take action to protect.
And if we can afford foreign adventures and foreign wars, why can't we afford to invest in green energy?
Yeah.
Emma, what about Class A cannabis? This is in the Mail. Calls for the drug to be raised up categories.
Yeah, so this is the Tory Police and Crime Commissioner from Dorset at the Tory Party conference yesterday, calling for cannabis to be recommissioned as a Class A substance on a par with heroin and cocaine.
Is it currently C?
It's B.
Yeah. Oh, it's
Class
B.
B. Yeah.
It's B, all right.
Class B drug at the moment, and most of the police and crime commissioners agree with him. Obviously, this is very popular at the conference. He says, this police and crime commissioner says it's causing huge damage, psychosis, schizophrenia, and also it's a major burden on the NHS. And, you know, all of this is true. Cannabis is now super strong. You know, things like skunk can cause psychosis, absolutely, can cause schizophrenia and all of that in certain individuals. But I think, and he says, it does the same harm as crack and heroin. And that's his words. I think that's idiotic to put it on a par with heroin and cocaine.
I think that's right, and resorting to my former Home Office role as Municipal Drugs Minister at the time,
as well as buses minister.
As well as buses, that was a for transport.
Oh.
But you know, we did an international comparative study, and what that showed very clearly was that those countries that treat cannabis and indeed other drugs as health issues and not as criminal issues, not only had a healthier population, but actually had a lower use of drugs. Portugal, which basically decriminalised drugs, you know, drug use has gone down in Portugal, not up.
And if we're going to reclassify cannabis as a Class A drug, then we need to seriously look at alcohol, which also hugely damages for certain people.
Well, it was Professor David Knott, wasn't it? Who was the drug czar, who I've talked to many times, who says, in his professional opinion, alcohol is more dangerous than cannabis.
Certainly causes more violence, certainly causes more long-term destruction of lives and of people's families,
more
relationships.
Expense on the NHS.
More expense, exactly.
Yeah. It's very interesting. Love to get your thoughts on that. It's a difficult issue, isn't it? gbviews@gbnews.uk. Have we got time for another one? Someone tell me?
Okay.
Just very quickly, talk about the post office in the
Another
Antarctic.
happy story, and I don't know if your camera can pick this up, but here it is on page 3 of the Telegraph. This post office here, and you've got this couple who've gone out to run this post office in Antarctica, in Port Lockroy. And I don't know how many customers they get down in this post office in Port Lockroy, but it seems to be a rather cold existence. They've gone there for a few months, they go to run the post office, they get a few passing tourists apparently.
Yeah, they can't have many people there, can they? Look, you two stay put if you would, because we might come back to
Yes.
after this.